The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising and marketing. Welcome back to our brand side segment where we're interviewing the folks that agency professionals report to. This is where we talk with VPs of marketing and CMOs within marketing at one specific brand. Today, you're going to learn from Jenny Lewis. Jenny Lewis is the CMO and president at The Knot Worldwide. The Knot Worldwide is a leading company in the celebrations industry, which includes wedding-focused brands like The Knot, Wedding Wire, and some international brands like Bodas and Hitched in the UK. They have other offerings, but we really focus on The Knot in this episode and Jenny's roles in promoting that brand and the repositioning that they had around 2 years ago. So to back things up, we'll talk about how she transitioned from a political career path to marketing, her journey at Uber, which was several years, and the skills she gained there, and how she helped pivot The Knot and modernize the heritage brand with a phenomenal rebrand that's geared towards Gen Z and a more social audience. And if you stay tuned, you're going to hear how Jenny turned a handwritten thank you note couriered via Uber into a life-changing job offer. All of this on this episode, it's about 30 minutes. You're going to want to connect with Jenny. We recommend you do that via LinkedIn. And if you like what you hear, please give this episode 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Brand Side Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Yeah. All right. Jenny Lewis, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Brand Side Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Gino. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk with you. We got a lot to talk about because you're the CMO and president at The Knot Worldwide. So those are big titles, a very well-known company, and especially in my world as I'm getting to that age now, late 20s. So I'm starting to get those invites and that brand is starting to come into my life. So I'm excited to talk with you about it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited to chat with you too. And it is such a fun chapter of your life to be in. So enjoy every second of it. I am unfortunately no longer in my late 20s. So my wedding invites these days are few and far between, but I miss that chapter very much.
I guess real fun question. Cause I've only been to a couple and now it's like my friends are that first wave is starting to kick in.
Yeah.
So what kind of wedding attending advice do you have for me, I guess?
I would say, as maybe kind of difficult as it sounds, because I also empathize with, you'll probably hit soon a lot of weddings back to back. I think 1 year I had 14 weddings or something.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Crazy. And, but go to all of them, I think is my advice. It is kind of a time in your life and it can be expensive, but I have such fond memories of those weekends, being there for my friends, being there for that moment. And so I think go to as many of them as you can, even if it feels a little exhausting at times. I don't think you'll regret it. And just being present, being present in the moment. We spend so much of our lives online and on social media and connecting digitally. And something that I love so much about this category is it is about those in-person community connection moments and being surrounded by people in real life. And so just being present, getting off your phone and enjoying the moment.
Love it. So why are we talking about this? Can you explain what your role is today? What does it mean to be the CMO and president at The Knot Worldwide? Can you tell us a little bit about The Knot today?
Yes, absolutely. So The Knot is a company made up of a whole bunch of companies. So The Knot Worldwide started as what many of us know us for is our wedding brand here in the US, The Knot. We also own a company called Wedding Wire, which is also in the wedding space, and then a number of international wedding brands as well too. Bodas in Spain, Hitched in the UK, Wedding Wire India, Mariages in France, Matrimonio in Italy, you name it. And so we focus on helping every couple celebrate the moments that make us. And that includes both wedding, but we also own two companies called The Bump and The Bash. And The Bump is focused on prenatal and postnatal, and The Bash is focused on event and party planning. So it is a kind of mashup and a portfolio of a whole bunch of different brands, all in the vein of celebrations and helping our communities celebrate the moments that make us.
Love it. Love it. And then what is your role in this ecosystem? What's your purpose, your mission here? What are you planning?
Yes. So I wear two, I would say, many hats, but two distinct hats. One is Chief Marketing Officer, which is overseeing our full portfolio and suite of brands. In that role, it's brand marketing, performance marketing, product marketing, creative, CRM, research and insights, as well as our editorial and content arm, which is a bit unique for this brand, how invested we are there. That's some of our heritage. And then my second hat is the president hat, which is where I act as president and somewhat, general manager type capacity over The Bump and The Bash, which are two of those emerging verticals for us. And that's a whole lot of fun to play into because it flexes different parts of my brain. In that role, I oversee things like product and engineering and sales alongside marketing.
Gotcha. So it's a lot to unpack here about the brand and the roles and responsibilities that you have to our audience that is looking to get their first job in marketing. But you could be a benchmark. You work hard. We follow some of the advice that you say in this episode. Maybe they'll be CMOs and presidents one day. So that's a really good goal for them to have.
Definitely. I hope they are. I mean, if they're listening to this podcast, that's a great start. They clearly care about their career and upping their game, and that's half the battle.
Yeah. So I didn't even ask, where are you calling in from?
I'm based up in Boston. We don't have an office here. I work remotely, but I'm in New York quite frequently, and DC, which is where two of our East Coast offices are, and then Barcelona and London and India.
Gotcha. So where I usually have some expertise is in the agency landscape. That's how we built this show, 250 interviews, where on the marketing side, maybe 20. So a lot less. Yeah. So bear with me as I ask some pretty fundamental questions. But do you work with agencies? Is this all your effort? Is there an in-house team when it comes to the external branding? Can you give me some insight into that?
Great question. So I've lived a bit in both worlds. I've been pretty much in-house my whole career. And prior to this role, I was at Uber for quite a long stretch. At Uber, we relied heavily on agencies, particularly media agencies, and then towards the kind of as the company evolved, creative as well too. Here we're more in-house, and that was a structure that I inherited. We've dabbled a bit with some media and creative agencies to help support for campaign spikes. But we're primarily in-house, I would say. What I encourage my team to think through is, what are the capabilities that we're great at and know? What are the ones that we know that we're not? And when we know that we're not being shy about reaching out to people who know a whole lot more than us about a specific channel or specific activation or what have you, so that we can learn and up our game. So here, mostly in-house, but definitely have had some amazing partners since I joined. We've worked with Known, we've worked with Special Group, we've worked with 21st Century Brand, and they've been incredible partners for us for these kind of spikes throughout the year. Gotcha.
So shall we kick it back to understand how you got to where you're at today? Does that sound like good? There, I think the question that I always like to ask to kind of like shock people, but when did you realize you wanted to get into marketing or the ad making, branding space? Like, where were you? Were you a child? Or, did you have family influence? Was there a TV show? What was going on in your brain when you made this active decision?
it kind of happened a little bit by accident. It's actually funny to reflect back on. When I was younger and going into college, I actually wanted to go into politics and campaign management specifically. Speaking of a TV show, I was very inspired by The West Wing, and DJ Craig was my idol, and she was the press secretary for the president in The West Wing. And so I went to GW, I went to DC for college specifically to pursue that track, and did some internships in lobbying groups and then at CNN, and was able to kind of dabble in the world of like campaign management, political journalism, things along those lines. And it just like the spark wasn't there. And it was one of those existential moments of I built my life around wanting this to be my career path. I was like very much known as a politico. I was like Model UN, student government, that whole track. And then I finally get in the building of these companies that I'd admired for so long, and something was missing. And so I had that kind of quarter life crisis of what do I do? How do I get off this track? Do I listen to my instincts, or do I just keep going down the path that I'm on?
Yeah.
And my senior year, I was fortunate because I was at GW, and they really emphasized taking advantage of being in the city and taking on internships. And I'd applied for a few different internships, and one of them was staying on the political track. And it was going to be at NBC working in their political unit. And then another one was at National Geographic Channel in their marketing department, in their ad sales marketing department. And I had a decision to make of which path to go. And ultimately I was like, you know what? I'm going to try something new. Let's try marketing. And I hadn't majored in it. I hadn't honestly taken any classes in it. And it was one of those light bulb moments when I joined that my brain was just being stretched in new and different ways that I think I'd been quite hungry for, and starting to see, I felt like I could be more creative. I felt like I found my people to an extent. And so then I just kind of fell in love with the idea of marketing, and particularly strategy behind marketing, where I think there are quite a few corollaries to campaign management and politics and how you think about positioning candidates. And so a lot of the fundamentals that I'd learned through that major, I was able to apply over, but in a very different capacity. And so I think that was the light bulb moment for me, and ultimately led me to New York, which led me to, continuing down that track.
Gotcha. So you had the choice, the NBC kind of the political route versus the National Geographic marketing route. There was that split in the road there?
Yep. Yeah.
And Nat Geo, I feel like, is a great brand as well to do.
I was like a dream brand to work on. It was fascinating.
Yeah. So that was an internship, and that was through the school. You applied through the school and they helped you land that?
Yep. The school it was a job. They had a job board. And so there was something on the job board for Nat Geo, and it was just like right place, right time. And applied. And back then, this was before like LinkedIn and before like as much of that competitive job market. So I have to imagine the pool of candidates was probably just a bunch of GW kids. And so, I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
That's incredible. Yeah. There was like this job board that was released when I was a junior in college. And before that, it wasn't too difficult to get an internship. And this massive job board went viral, and then I had no shot.
Yeah. Become like one of 10 to like one of 10,000. Yeah.
That's why we try to get the direct advice from this show to the people out there. So I guess like if you were looking for that same internship today, how would you handle that in today's ecosystem?
I'd actually, so what I would probably do, and I ended up doing, later in my career. So I'll give another example, which was after I'd had, a few years of professional full-time experience under my belt. I was in New York, and Uber was just starting to take off. And they were still they were still like black cars. The slogan at the time was everyone's private driver, very premium. They hadn't expanded to Uber X and to more mass market, but I really wanted to work there. And there was an opening for a marketing manager, and I just pursued the crap out of it. And that was one moment that I knew I was like, I want this job. And so not only did I do the LinkedIn thing and, reach out to anybody that I could find and any mutual connections, but I also found the recruiter who was likely recruiting for the role. I wasn't even 100% sure, and tried every combination of her name at uber.com. And so like Samantha, I won't give her name, but Samantha dot blah, 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 at uber.com, and then s dot blah, blah, at uber.com, and cold outreached. And then I got that got my foot in the door. She ultimately responded to one of those and got my foot in the door for the internship, or for the interview. And then after the interview, they had just launched a courier service in New York, and they had posted on Twitter something about like use case for that service. And one was a handwritten thank you note for the job that you really want. So I hand wrote all my thank you notes and had them Uber courier it back over. And I pulled every trick out of the hat I possibly could. And ultimately landed the job. It was the best career decision I could have made.
Incredible. So when was that in your career? Where were you at before?
So I moved. So Nat Geo was owned by, or is owned by a company called News Corp, which owns a whole bunch of different properties, including FX, Fox Sports. And so after that internship with Nat Geo, that got my foot in the door for FX. And I moved to New York to work for some of those properties. FX, Fox Sports, Fuel was another channel at the time, in their marketing department. Spent a couple of years there, doing integrated marketing, working primarily with some of their biggest advertisers on ad placement and custom integrations. That it's funny, it feels so dated now, but back then it was like everybody was talking about digital and like the rise of digital marketing, and I just felt like I was missing the curve. So I moved to a agency, Undertone, actually an ad network called Undertone. They're still around. They're doing great. And they were more digital centric, spent some time there. And that's when Uber came up. So I was at Undertone at the time. And I was kind of actually at a crossroads between, I was thinking about going back to school and getting my MBA. And that's what I was studying for the GMAT. And that's when I saw Uber and ultimately decided to take that path.
Okay. That was my next question, because I don't know how it really works. Like, is the MBA required if you want to pursue marketing nowadays? Like, does it depend? I know it's highly variable, but in your situation, you didn't end up pursuing it. Is that correct? You just went right to Uber, you got the job.
Yeah. My take, no, not required. There's use cases. I've hired a lot of MBA folks. I've worked with a lot of MBA folks, and there's definitely a ton of value that can come through it. I had, at that time, I was looking for something that I wasn't getting out of my day job, which was a bit more visibility into some of the business fundamentals, really deeply understanding kind of how the industry works, how to think, how to build like sharp strategic plans. And so I was pursuing the MBA for those reasons of, I kind of want to step back. I'd studied political communication in college, so I hadn't done the business track. And so I felt like I was missing those skills. And ultimately, Uber gave them to me in spades, and it ended up being the best MBA program I could have asked for, because Uber had such a focus on understanding the business. We were all owners. We all need to feel deeply accountable to the metrics. And that was part of the culture. So ultimately it gave me what I needed. And I would say if you're not finding a culture that gives you those skills as a marketer, then an MBA might be a good path to take. Because I do think having strong business acumen has to be a core competency or capability for any good marketing professional.
Gotcha. I think just like, I want to ask about for the undergraduate or somebody that's close to graduating their in college,
Yeah.
like something I'm curious about is there's a way to think about how to strategically get your first job in marketing, because it is a large a field with multiple P's. I believe there's 4 of them, if I remember my undergraduate education correctly. Should you pick like one route within marketing, like product or like brand marketing, and then go all in on that? What would you recommend? Just like a mind process for that person.
I'd say for getting started, I think there's probably, if I were to go back in time with the landscape as it is today, I think there's probably 2 paths that I would pursue out of college. One would be going to a big company and going more deep in a function, to your point, and selecting a function that, spoke to me, that I felt like I was uniquely a fit for, be it brand marketing, product marketing, performance marketing, media, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
A big organization where you will get like depth of expertise. And then you could always move around and scale up from there. Or I would look for smaller companies, more startup, and look for more of that generalist marketing role. And I think both are great. They're both great in different ways and have pros and cons. I ultimately benefited. My role at Uber was more generalist, and it gave me a ton of foundational thinking in just looking across the full funnel versus being segregated to one part of it. But I think both can be great. And those are the 2 paths that I'd probably look at, is where can I learn from best in class marketers, or where can I get just a breadth of experience in different areas?
Right. Because I don't have much experience. I feel like if I were to look for my first job in marketing, I would like to go to a large organization where I can hide, and I would be in brand marketing and lowest of the low. If I mess up, nobody really notices, but I'm learning from all these great people. Very sheltered is what I would want.
Oh, no, you don't want to hide, Gino.
No, nobody would know. No.
Oh, I know that instinct, but no, I mean, the right culture, the right marketing team and organization, if you mess up, they will be fine with it, and you will learn from it, and you will get better, and the organization will get better. Like half the battle is messing up so we can learn.
That's right.
But I hear you. And those big companies, you can get sometimes lost in like a sea of a bunch of names and faces. So I do think, culling for the right culture, the right leaders, looking up the totem pole of, do I like some of these people that I'm working for? Do I feel like I'm learning from them is important.
Gotcha. So how long were you at Uber? And that was like your big, like learning experience. It was your MBA replacement. Is that safe to say?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, that really was probably a big catalyst in my career. I was there for 7 years.
Incredible.
Kind of grew up there. I entered as an individual contributor, wearing a ton of different hats. And then by the time that I left, I was leading marketing for US and Canada across Uber and Uber Eats. And so it was a kind of big career growth for me in a relatively short period of time, and a lot of increase in responsibility, increase in management demands and things of that nature. So just had to be wildly adaptable, I would say.
Yeah. That's incredible. So you have worked with Special US then, that agency?
Yes. Yeah. And I worked with them. I worked with them at Uber on Uber Eats first, and then worked with them again here at the Knot too.
We had an episode with Kelsey Hodgkin a couple months back. So I think everybody should, when they're done listening to this, go check out that episode, because it might piece together some things.
Definitely. Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah. So then after Uber, where do we go from there?
I came here. I exited Uber. I actually had my first, my son took my mat leave at Uber, and it was, I feel like, the first time I took a deep breath in 7 years. and reflected and said, you know what, this has been an amazing ride, but I'm ready to hop on a new one. So actually took a little time off and did some advisory work. I wanted to be really thoughtful in where I went next and not just jump at the first thing. And so spoke to a ton of companies, big and teeny tiny, and ultimately fell in love with the leadership team here, our CEO, the board, the mission, what they were looking for, what we were creating, and jumped on.
Gotcha. So where was it at when you walked in, and what was the vision what was the game plan from day one?
Yeah. I would say, they were looking for where we were at. The company was at a little bit of a turning point and the marketing strategy in particular, that it has been around for a long time. The Not brand in particular has been around since the 90s. And so it's a heritage brand. It's grown up largely with the millennial audience. And as Gen Z is entering kind of the marrying age category, the brand has to adapt so that it doesn't get swept out with the tide. So it was at a little bit of a turning point on how do we modernize, which led to, I know you mentioned the rebrand earlier, just kind of giving our visual ID a bit of an overhaul. How do we start?
It looks great, by the way. It's so friendly and it feels easy to use. It speaks well. It's very nice. Yeah.
That's awesome. It was a labor of love, certainly. And one that, and I think also, for us right now in particular, not just the visual ID, but how do we think, your generation, frankly, is engaging differently and planning weddings differently than millennials. They're turning to social for a lot of inspiration, to find vendors, to find venues and so forth. So how do we become more social centric? It's always been a part of our strategy. Go follow us. We have, quite a few followers and things like that. It's not something we were ignoring, but I don't know that we were taking it as seriously as we should have been. And so some of my mission has been how to take what we are so good at, which is helping couples and guiding them through the wedding planning journey and process, and apply that to the social landscape and be there when couples are starting to search. From like the moment they get engaged, the next thing we want them to do is download the Not app so that we can help them figure out how much they need to spend, where to get started, where to find vendors, how to book vendors, what to expect from, timelines and payments and all those good things, because it is not easy. And luckily we've been in the industry for a long time, but we need to be there when couples get engaged so that they know about us and they can take advantage of the services that we provide.
Got it. So you were part of that rebrand and the new system and how you're showing up on social. You were part of all of that.
Yes. Yeah. It was certainly a big team effort, but very much so.
Yeah. And what was like the most challenging and also the most rewarding part of this?
I would say the most challenging is getting others bought in on why, changing your visual identity, changing your brand. And it ended up being a pretty drastic overhaul. Is a big decision for the company, and it extends beyond just marketing. It had implications on product. It took up a lot of their capacity for half of that year to update our design system across the entire product experience. It obviously presents risk. Change generally presents risk. So, and it was, had financial implications too. So I would say the hardest part was influencing my peer set, our board, et cetera, on the why. And it didn't end up being as hard as I might have expected because they're all quite pragmatic and smart and get it. But there's something a little scary about, yes, there's data that points to why we should do it. Yes, there's rationale, but there's also instinct and intuition that you have to bring to it as well too. And there's something a little scary about that if you're putting yourself out on a ledge and saying, this is something that we need to do to future-proof the brand, and getting them bought in. And I would say the most rewarding part was actually seeing it in the wild and just, I've always loved that about marketing, of like how gratifying it is of this thing that you've been talking about for 6 months, be it a spot, be it a campaign, be it in this case, rebrand. And like, you're looking at it in decks and in materials, and you see like the hatchling of an idea, and then actually seeing it in the world is just so awesome.
And then you see the results from it, and I'm sure it's
Even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you go back to the stakeholders and you say, well, it's working, so nobody can get mad.
Yeah, definitely. And that was a huge win for us as well too. We saw lifts across a number of different metrics shortly after rolling out, and so I think that did also build a lot of trust in marketing as well too. Of sometimes we have to take those swings, and they will pay off.
Where can people see all the stuff that we're talking about? What's the best way to experience this for the listeners?
I would love for you to, first of all, follow us at The Knot. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're all over the place. And then check us out at theknot.com.
Amazing. And how can people connect with you if they want to work on your team one day, or say hello, or just get more advice? What do you recommend?
Please do. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me there. I usually am kind of scanning my inbox, or DMs, as the kids call it, to see anybody interesting that comes on in. So feel free to find me there.
Wonderful. Well, Jenny, we'll leave it there. People should go reach out to you. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. I know we could talk for much longer, but I wish you all the best in 2025 and beyond.
Thanks so much, Gino. This was a ton of fun. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.